From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Could the U.S. and China restart trade negotiations? Markets react to the possibility on Tuesday. In the path, tornadoes leave behind a twisted mess in Iowa. Betsy Gibbon reports. In agribusiness, trading in times of uncertainty.
Trump administration is unlike most administrations. He's a negotiator. He throws things out sometimes, muddies the water.
And the business of barley in Idaho.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. There's new hope this morning that the U.S. and China may be attempting to restart talks aimed at preventing an all-out trade war. This comes just as the U.S. is set to implement another $16 billion of duties on Chinese imports. According to published reports, representatives of the U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and his Chinese counterpart are having private conversations, looking at ways to re-engage in negotiations. Bloomberg News sources caution that a specific timetable, the issues to be discussed, and the format for talks are not yet finalized. Even on the hint of good news, the grain markets reacting positively on Tuesday.
Soybeans in particular took that as very good news, at one point being up almost 30 cents today. Corn and wheat followed. Wheat at one point almost 20 cents higher, corn almost 8 cents higher at one point.
President Trump has threatened to hit China with tariffs ranging from $200 billion to $500 billion, but so far those have only been threats. However, the U.S. has imposed $34 billion of duties on Chinese goods, and China retaliated, hitting ag products. Now today, another $16 billion worth of tariffs are supposed to go into effect.
However, let's see what tomorrow brings. Tomorrow marks the day that we could begin to start placing round 2 of tariffs on China, $16 billion tariffs. And how China would respond to that is a very good question. There is not a whole lot of new goods that China can put tariffs on. They may choose to increase tariffs on current things, such as soybeans. So tomorrow could be a very different day if something like that were to take place.
The Trump administration last week announcing an aid package to help farmers who've been hurt by the tariff and counter-tariff battle. USDA expecting to roll out the $12 billion program in September. Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue says that the aid package could have payments reaching farmers by late September. Perdue making that comment while in Argentina as part of the G20 meeting of agriculture ministers. Checks will go out to farmers, quote, as soon as they prove their yields, according to Perdue, who says the yields will be based on actual production, not historical averages. Now, Perdue does say producers should not expect to be made whole by the president's $12 billion tariff rescue package.
If a farmer sees a $2 drop in soybean prices, then they should not necessarily expect a $2 per bushel mitigation payment.
Many ag groups saying they appreciate the help, but they would rather have trade, not aid. So we asked farmers from across the country to tell us if they think the plan will alleviate financial concerns. Results of the Farm Journal Pulse survey show 37% of farmers responded not at all. Another 24% said it helped somewhat, and 29% said they're not sure. Only 10% said yes, it completely alleviates their fears. 670 farmers took part in this unscientific survey. Perdue also calling for agriculture to be included in any upcoming trade discussions with the European Union. That is, officials from the EU say the talks last week did not include farming. The Business Times reporting agriculture wasn't part of the framework agreement, and while soybean purchases were mentioned, officials say the EU was going to buy beans from the U.S. anyway, given how expensive Brazilian beans have become. The clarification follows the president's recent comments on, quote, opening up Europe for farmers. He made those during an Iowa roundtable discussion. It's been nearly 2 weeks since a handful of twisters touched down in central Iowa, destroying buildings and crops in the path. AgDay national reporter Betsy Gibbon traveled to the hardest hit areas and has a check on cleanup.
Down corn, snapped stalks, and scattered ears lying in the dirt are what remain on Dave Newby's cornfields in Bondurant, Iowa.
It doesn't look real good. I think we're just going to have to skip this part of the combine.
The incredible remains of a tornado torched cornfields, leaving its mark etched into the ground. Newby's house still standing a quarter of a mile away.
It's about a mile long strip of damage. I would say it's averaging about 200 feet wide. Almost complete destruction. I figure we're going to lose about $25,000.
That was just one of the pop-up tornadoes that hit several central Iowa towns on July 19th. Other twisters touching down in the towns of Marshalltown and Pella, Iowa. How are cleanup efforts going?
From the city's perspective, it's going very well. For the road damage, just debris in the roads, and power lines, utility lines, going very well, going back to normal.
Police say most of Pella was saved.
It was a little bit further north of us, about a mile of the town itself, the town proper. And then the next thing I knew, we had receiving phone calls from Vermeer Corporation that it touched down there and caused damage.
I did not hear it. I did not see it. We started getting information over our security channels that we were taking damage.
Vermeer now cleaning up the damage.
About half of our facilities are in this kind of hot zone that are unstable at this point in time to be able to go into to do work.
Corps says it's quite remarkable, not just because this was the parking lot after the storm.
And these parking lots were full of cars piled on top of each other.
But that Vermeer hosted a Customer Appreciation Day with nearly 500 customers on campus, all taking shelter with no casualties.
If you listen to our CEO talk, what he's the most proud and happy about is how well our systems worked.
And I have to describe it, it's this dull roar, and again, the best way to describe it would be a freight train.
Laley is adjacent on the same campus.
And as I was going back into the shelter, the outside area of our windows went completely white. Couldn't see anything outside. The wind had gotten quite intense, and then you hear the sound.
The staff taking shelter, the buildings and the daycare across the street damage-free.
Doors were damaged, but nothing that's significant that would keep us out of operation.
Just roughly 1,000 to 1,500 feet from the tornado's path.
And then it kind of cut its way across, and it basically left the campus in front of Plant 7. So this is Plant 7 here, and it left the campus and jumped the road, and that's when it went across into the farm field and then hit the next farmsteads.
While those impacted pick up and calculate the damages, be it business or field.
This is something that we'll be able to bounce back from.
They're also counting their blessings, knowing it could have been much worse. Reporting for AgDay, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
All right, thanks, Betsy. We'll continue in Iowa cornfields with Mike Hoffman. He has today's crop comments. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Clinton. It's only the first day of August, and take a look at this photograph from Ryan Heininger in Iowa. He says the corn crop in his area near Burlington is drying down so fast, he's predicting an August start for harvest in this field. According to the latest crop progress report, 31% of the corn crop is in dough stage. That's about double the 5-year average. Ryan says the chances of rain look bleak for the next 10 days, and temperatures are headed back toward the 90s. However, USDA says overall it's a good crop in the Hawkeye state. 78% of the corn is rated good to excellent. And taking a look at the wind speed forecast, a little bit in the eastern lakes and mid-Atlantic states as we head through the afternoon then. That picks up across the northern Mississippi Valley and parts of the west as well. Into the day tomorrow we go. It'll start off just a little breezy, parts of the west and the far northern plains. And then we'll see the winds pick up in New England, along the east coast, and some areas from the Dakotas back through the western states. We'll have your forecast coming up, but first here are some hometown temps.
Keeping track of the shifting market prices has never been so easy. Get the latest commodity prices sent directly to your cell phone with market updates. Just text MARKETS8 to 31313 to get started.
With so much trade uncertainty, how do you keep your marketing plan on point? Tyne Morgan asks the question from the road. That's next. And later, from grain to liquid gold. These barley fields are big business for beverage makers. We'll find out why from Idaho today on In the Country. It wasn't just trade moving markets on Tuesday. Ted Seifert's on the floor of the CME. He has details.
Aside from the trade talks, there is a little bit of a warmer and drier forecast for August, which is helping the grains out. And crop conditions yesterday were not showing as big of an improvement as some of the market was looking for. So a fair amount of good news for grains here today, and a stronger day across the board, breaking some key resistance areas. It's been a fairly negative day in the livestock across the board. Feeder cattle leading the charge lower in the cattle complex, and that may be very much tied into the early strength that we saw in corn and soybean meal. Feedstuffs getting more expensive here today, and overall the chart on feeder cattle is starting to look a little concerning. Today's low needs to be held to stay in this upward trending channel that we've been in for the last 3.5 months. If we break through it, it looks like we could be in for a deeper correction. Overall, the live cattle chart doesn't look quite as bad. Last week we traded cash cattle at 112, which was a little bit softer than what we had hoped for, but we're still trading about a $2 discount to cash. As far as hogs are concerned, we're not getting a whole lot of bounce out of the idea that the U.S. and China might be talking trade talks again. That's a little bit disappointing. I think overall, hogs are trying to find a bit of a bottom in here. We have factored a lot of the negative trade news in, and exports have actually kept up fairly well. But it might be a while before we get something really bullish to talk about in the hogs. This is Ted Seifert of Zaner Ag Hedge coming to you from the CME floor.
In analysis this morning, Tyne Morgan joins us from the road in search of advice on marketing in turbulent times.
Here now with Bob Utterback of Utterback Marketing. Bob, we look at what's happened really the last 6 to 8 weeks when it comes to these prices, and we see the sharp decline that we've had because of all of this tariff talk and this trade war that we're in. What have we learned?
Well, the funds can flip their position very quickly. They went from over 200,000 long corn to over 150,000 net short in 5 weeks. That's almost 500,000 contracts in corn was changed and that has impact on the corn market. So the market is going to be very responsive to weather, but it's also going to be very responsive to this trade. And I think with the Trump administration is unlike most administrations. He's a negotiator. He throws things out sometimes, muddies the water, and then things get solved underneath the table, but we don't see the sausage being made. And I think we're in, with the China situation, more longer term, whereas I think the NAFTA will get resolved quicker.
That's my next question. You look at this tariff aid package that the Trump administration announced in July. That leads some to believe that the Trump administration isn't backing down from this trade war anytime soon.
I told somebody back in April, May, if Trump is going to have a trade policy done, he has to have it done by mid-August so he can get implemented, so he can get the political positive reactions by the midterms.
Does that seem likely?
No, I don't think there's anything on the table that can get done fast enough by August. A October surprise doesn't do him enough time to help him in the midterms. So I think he's positioned himself now that the economy is going to grow and the positive impacts of low prices effect on the general economy is better than the negative impact on agriculture. And unfortunately right now agriculture is a sacrificial pond. Long term, it could be helpful for the livestock and the grains, but in the next year I think it's going to be tough.
All right, short-term pain, but you're saying possibly long-term gain.
So that's why you got to get this fall, take advantage of these fall lows.
Yep.
Buy the market so you can be in position to sell next spring market highs.
All right, Bob Utterback, thanks so much. Stay with us. We need to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with more on Ag Day.
To talk with Bob one-on-one, call Utterback Marketing Services, toll free at 800-832-1488.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Your meteorologist Mike Hoffman looking at the weather map, and that front that's draped over the Gulf Coast states could bring quite a bit of rain, it sounds like.
Yeah, it looks like it kind of stalls over the western panhandle of Florida. Wherever that ends up stalling, there's going to be a lot of rain over the next couple of days. And some of that will be easing up this front as well as that progresses toward the east coast. We also have a secondary cool front kind of dropping southward. That will have each afternoon some decent showers and thunderstorms along it. And we have the low pressure in the southwest actually back into Southern California. So some of those areas, that kind of pushes where those afternoon showers and thunderstorms pop up a little farther west. So putting the maps into motion, you can see this band of rain that our computer model brings into the panhandle of Florida, and that kind of brings it all the way up into parts of Georgia and the Carolinas as well, especially the western portions of the Carolinas. Decent showers and thunderstorms northern Mississippi Valley as we head through this afternoon. Then heading through tonight, most of this northern front kind of dries out as is typical. Southern sections, again, this front stalling out across parts of the panhandle of Florida, and you can see some pretty heavy showers and thunderstorms there once again with that front. It is slowly moving, so hopefully it does kind of keep one area from getting way too much. You can see the hit and miss variety stuff all the way up into parts of Wyoming, Montana as we head through tomorrow afternoon. and that band of showers and thunderstorms along that weak cool front. Southern Great Lakes down in northern Missouri. Now, don't expect a whole lot in northern Missouri. I know you folks could use a whole bunch. Past 24 hours, that's what we look at. Adding in the next 36 hours, our model again is showing some areas getting 8 to 10 inches of rain there in the panhandle of Florida. And we will continue to see the fairly heavy amounts, 2, 3, 4 inch amounts, all the way up in other parts of Georgia and the western Carolinas. It'll be more hit and miss than back to the west of there across the Ohio Valley into the Great Lakes and the northern Mississippi Valley. There's the afternoon temperatures behind that secondary front, only in the lower 70s for highs. 80s through most of the plains till you get to Texas, and it's in the 90s. Triple digits each afternoon continues in the far southwestern states. There's the lows tonight, lots of 60s across the Corn Belt, even a few 50s in the northwestern sections of the Corn Belt. And then highs tomorrow behind that front, only 60s and 70s, fair amount of clouds there, but still 70s and 80s Ohio Valley, and then hotter as you get to the south. Here's the jet stream, and it is showing a little bit of a change as we head into next week. You'll notice the trough in the east kind of goes away, at least temporarily. Trough comes into the west, and I think eventually this will dive back into the east, maybe in another 10 days or so, but it's showing the ridge over most of the Corn Belt as we head through the middle of next week. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at local forecasts. First of all, Amarillo, Texas, mostly sunny, rather warm today, high up to 92 degrees. Peru, Indiana, a mixture of clouds and sunshine, maybe a shower, high 77. And Hartford, Connecticut, cloudy with showers and a thunderstorm, high of 83.
When we come back, we'll take a look at the produce business with help from our partners over at the Packer. And later, the business of barley. We'll head to Idaho for these fields of golden grain. In news from the produce department, California citrus growers are not exactly embracing the administration's $12 billion tariff aid program. The California Citrus Mutual Board of Directors calling the proposal a noble effort, but the CCM says, quoting now, the proposal falls short of meeting the needs of citrus growers who export approximately 25% of their tonnage to offshore markets. A spokesperson for the Citrus Mutual says the 3 program areas as presently structured are not viable pathways for their producers. Citrus Growers Group saying that the proposed commodity purchase program as proposed would not make up the difference for those lost exports. Also from the Packers, citing lower banana prices in Europe and oversupplies of pineapple in North America, the Fresh Del Monte Company is reporting a loss in its latest quarter. The Coral Gables, Florida-based business saying overall sales were higher, with net sales in Q2 at nearly $1.3 billion. The biggest factor for overall lower net income were congestion, delays, and inclement weather at loading ports in Central America, continued tightening of the transportation market, and higher commodity costs. We'll talk beer and barley when we come back.
In the Country, brought to you by Kubota's M7060, built to get the job done. See KubotaUSA.com or your local Kubota dealer for more information.
With the growing popularity of microbrewery beers in this country, longtime beer makers like Miller and Budweiser cannot just rely on the names and heritage. They need to produce a quality product, and a big part of that is quality ingredients. That's why Budweiser's parent company puts a lot of emphasis on barley breeding. Todd Gleason from the University of Illinois Extension takes us to a field day in Idaho.
AB InBev develops and tests its own barley varieties. Josh Butler is the senior manager for global barley breeding. During this year's Growers Day, he explained to the farmers who raise barley for Anheuser-Busch that his group has 3 main customers. There's the maltster, beers made from malted barley. The brewer, the malt needs to be consistent in its enzyme and protein makeup. And most importantly, he says, the farmer.
So really, ultimately, the first goal is yield. Yield and standability and other agronomics that are beneficial to a grower.
Breeding new, high-yielding barley varieties farmers will grow that also meet the needs of the other 2 customers, the maltster and the brewer, is a pretty difficult task.
When you combine it with the other aspects, the other customers we're trying to make happy, it can be difficult because of the unique specs of Budweiser and what we're looking for in the enzyme package and so on. It is more complex than breeding for some of the craft type beers. So it's a very unique set of specs. So when you combine that with the traits that we're looking for agronomically, it can get relatively complex.
A complexity Anheuser-Busch, the agricultural company, works to manage for the benefit of its barley growers, maltsters, and brewers. For University of Illinois Extension, I'm Todd Gleason.
Now, Todd says 600 farmers provide the barley for 98% of the Budweiser sold here in the U.S. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in, spent part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.